Richard is told that he has stage 4 cancer. The pain in his upper back is actually the result of a malignant tumor. The cancer has most likely spread to other organs. Richard will live 1 year at the most, but if he doesn't get treatment, a few months. He gets into his car and goes back to work. Richard decides to hide his illness and contemplates how he has lived his life. Because of this emotional state, Richard snaps and jumps into a pond, blaming God for his illness. During dinner, daughter Olivia confesses that she is not of traditional orientation. Veronica begins to deny it, but Richard is supportive. When the daughter leaves, Richard learns that his wife has a lover. His name is Henry, and he is Richard's boss. This makes Richard laugh. Because of this news, he decides to hide that he has cancer. A new day is coming. His class is constantly interrupted. First, a bird crashes through the glass, and then a student gets a phone call. Richard suggests that students who are not interested in his subject should leave. He promises that he will give them credit for the exam. Richard's time is limited, and he would like to tutor students who are interested in his subject. After a couple of minutes, Richard gives them an assignment to read just one book this semester. When they do, they need to stand next to him and tell him what the book was about. A lot of students get up and leave. Only a few people remain. A feminist sits among them. He says he doesn't care about the reasoning behind the equality of the sexes. After class, Richard meets with Peter. He asks him to give him a vacation. Peter refuses, and then Richard confesses that he has stage 4 cancer. He doesn't want to die a teacher. Peter is stunned at this news. He is surprised that Richard has lung cancer since he is a total non-smoker. Richard jokingly says that he can smoke now. It could happen to anyone. Richard decides to refuse treatment. Only Peter can help him, but he must swear that no one will know his secret. Meanwhile, Veronica is having fun with Henry. Tomorrow, Richard asks Veronica not to tell Olivia about their quarrel, but Richard himself will do whatever he wants. Veronica agrees. Today, Olivia brings her friend to the house. She notices that her parents are acting strangely. Richard jokingly says they are drunk and high at the same time. He offers Taylor a drink, but Olivia takes her friend away, and the duo continues to drink. Before going to bed, Veronica regrets reacting badly to her daughter's confession. A new day arrives. Richard asks the students to give him a cigarette and accidentally spits all the smoke back at a student. To get to know each other better, each student has to tell a story about themselves. A feminist reaches out, but Richard asks another girl to tell him about herself. Her name is Claire, her uncle is Henry. This surprises Richard, and he suggests that the students have a lesson in the bar. Richard doesn't understand why people confine themselves to strict boundaries. Every one of them is going to die. So why can't they do whatever they want? A couple minutes later, he's having fun with a waitress just as Veronica is having fun with Henry. Before leaving, Richard returns to the students and asks them to leave a nice tip for the waitress. During the evening dinner, Veronica apologizes to Olivia. The daughter accepts the apology. A week later, the feminist talks about a book Richard recommended. He asks her to describe the book in just one word. The girl says, revenge. Richard likes this answer and says that by the end of the semester she will be rid of feminism. After class, a student decides to stop by Richard's house. He brings marijuana in the shape of cupcakes. Deanie suggests that Richard should have some fun. He obviously wasn't expecting such an offer, but since he only has a couple months to live, he agrees. At home, Richard asks Olivia if she is happy with Taylor. She says she's doing fine. Richard realizes that Olivia is telling the truth and is very happy for his daughter. Tomorrow, another student talks about the book. They take turns smoking and drinking alcohol. They are spotted by Henry and Peter. That same afternoon, Peter asks Richard to go with him to a meeting of cancer patients. Already at the meeting, Peter tells him that he does not have cancer, but he is very afraid of losing his best friend. However, Richard does not want to talk and asks Peter to leave. They go to a bar and get very drunk. At the same bar, Claire comes in. After Peter leaves, Richard tells her that he has cancer. Claire promises not to tell anyone and offers to dance a little. Suddenly, he feels very sick. Peter rushes to the hospital and finds Richard alive. He asks his friend to stop taking drugs or it will kill him. That afternoon, he is discharged from the hospital and returns home. Veronica notices that Richard is having trouble walking. He says that his back hurts. Henry is going to fire Richard. Richard says that he is well aware of his meeting with Veronica, and if Henry doesn't want his wife to find out, he will have to approve the sabbatical. As he walks out of the office, he is overcome with extreme pain that makes him practically fall over. Today, Richard and his family come to visit Peter, and Richard can't hold back a cough. Peter tries to divert attention to himself, but his daughter notices a bloody mark on his handkerchief. Richard swears he's fine and she shouldn't worry. Even after returning home, the pain has gone nowhere. Richard realizes that his life is practically over. Tomorrow, Claire talks about the book she read. He likes her story, and Claire gets 5 points. He calls each of his students an endangered species. But they are the ones who are supposed to make a difference in this world. They are too smart to be like 98% of other people. The most important thing is not to miss their chance, and while they are alive, should enjoy every breath. Having finished his lesson, Richard falls to the floor. In this state, Peter finds him. Richard asks Peter to take him to church. Although the church is completely empty, Peter sits down next to Richard. However, Richard asks to move to another seat. Peter begins to pray for Richard's health, but he says that prayers will not help him. He is getting worse every day and will have a hard time saying goodbye to everyone. Peter starts to cry. Richard asks him not to. Once they get up, Peter hugs Richard and calls him a good man. In the evening, Olivia comes up to him. She tells him that she is going out to a party with Taylor. Richard asks his daughter to have a good time. After a while, a corporate meeting begins. Richard approaches Henry's wife and kisses her, but he has to pretend that nothing happened. All the guests are seated. Two women begin to talk about a man who died of melanoma. After drinking half a glass of wine, Richard stands up. Veronica thinks he has decided to reveal her secret. He starts by calling Peter a man with a heart of gold. Also, Richard has some parting words to say. This is the last day he sees everyone together. Now everyone learns that Richard is going to die soon. After reflecting on his life, he realized that he was often wrong and failed. Richard has not valued life and has failed to live it to the fullest, but he is proud to have lived it with Veronica and calls her his wife. Unfortunately, people turn their backs on their primary responsibility to live a life full of experiences that they choose to live. One must live honorably in order to die honorably. After dinner, Veronica approaches Richard. He apologizes that this is how she found out about his illness and asks Veronica to find her happiness, after which they say goodbye. He goes home to write a farewell letter, but Olivia returns. She tells him that she was dumped by Taylor. Richard asks not to be upset. She has her whole life ahead of her. They have a drink together, and Olivia asks what's going on with him. He has to tell her about his illness. She starts to cry, but he asks her not to worry about him, though even Richard can't hold back the tears. He is about to leave to think about some things, but he doesn't know where. Before they leave, they hug and Richard tells her how much he loves her. Already outside, he takes one last look at his daughter and sends an air kiss. Driving away from the city, Richard can't keep his emotions in check and looks at his friend with whom he will spend the rest of his life. Pulling into an intersection, he begins to laugh and chooses to go straight, thus making his conscious choice. You were on the channel on Recap Roman. Don't forget to subscribe and put a like to not miss new videos.